In an unexpected twist, a car story rewrote history, rattling the automotive world.
I was in Nashville for a press launch of the Nissan Pathfinder Hybrid, which was one model year and utter trash. And I'd be stunned if even one still exists to this day. And what a horrible waste of my time on such a special day. But of course, we didn't know it would be such a special day. We launched the story and it instantly became like the internet's biggest sensation. Just Jalopnik writing the story and like publishing it. And at that point, my involvement was kind of over, but it was enough. The story was out there and there hadn't been a new challenger to the record in many years. And it was kind of viewed that like no one would really even try anymore. There was a lot more traffic, harder to evade the police, etc. And so like the fact that you broke it and broke it by such an enormous amount was a big deal in that community. And in the general car, this is always an interest of Americans, the cross-country drive. And the fact that someone could do it so quickly, people are very interested in that. It publishes, it goes live, and I remember it's just a huge, huge, huge deal. And there were a few interesting things that I remember almost in the immediate aftermath. One was, one of the comments on Jalopnik was a guy who said, I was in St. Louis in the middle of the night and somebody drove past me in a Mercedes and I was wondering what that was. And I was like, huh. Like that's, wow. Like that, to me, that always stood out for me. Could have been lying, but like the way he wrote the comment, I will like kind of never forget that that was like a very special, like, oh, an interesting validation from a random observer. I met Dave Black at like Cars and Coffee the next week and he brought the car. And that was the first time I had met Dave. The second time I met Dave. The first time, Dave's story was so bizarre. Dave had owned like a Jetta sport wagon and then decided to buy a Gallardo. And that's how you met him at the Lambo dealer, right? And you were like, find somebody who's crazy enough to do this with me. Well, Dave was just this kind of like random. He was like, all right, yeah, I'll probably do it. And so he didn't, I don't think, realize the fame that was about to come his way, at least in this small circle of individuals. And then I remember Dan telling me that he almost bailed. And those were all interesting. And then there was some blowback from some of the other people in the world of this, most notably from Alex Roy, who for some reason like scapegoated me as the writer of the story, even though I didn't do anything. He had always enjoyed kind of the notoriety of being the guy who had the record, which more notoriety came to him from that. Like was kind of a writer and sort of in the car scene, and especially New York City. And I think he was always a little bit miffed that he had kind of gotten taken down, and by a pretty wide margin. Like I have a suspicion that he had written this book about like all the prep that he did for the record, how hard it was. And I think that he was like a little dismayed that like it just, it was beaten by such a big number.